So.
All right. I just want to welcome everybody back and say thank you for joining this. This is a new group, and it's wonderful to have you all part of it. And it's a privilege to host it. And it's also a privilege to have my colleague, John Bach, be the moderator and host, and also organizing our speakers. And so I will turn this over to you, John, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight, man. It's just such a great community builder, and I hope that you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So as my little nameplate says, I'm John Bach. I am a program manager at eBay, going on 10 years now. And I did a talk last year at our sister org, CoreDev sponsors QA SIG, about being a PM instead of being so many years as someone in QA. And at the end of that talk, someone encouraged me to start a PM SIG. And so it took me a year to think about it. And I bounced the idea of Shelley and Joe if they would host such a thing. And they said yes. So in October, we had our first speaker, went really well. And we said, well, let's keep going. Let's do it again. So every even month, we get together and we talk about product, project, or program management issues. I find a speaker, like our tonight's speaker, Alicia Pudwill, and see what kind of ideas emerge from just the interaction of what it's like to be in either a project or product or program manager in all kinds of companies. So tonight, Alicia comes to us from Qmatic, and where she is going to be talking about ecology. And so socially, economically, structurally, these systems that are intertwined to create this environment that can dramatically affect our projects. So I found her topic to be fascinating, especially in her abstract. She mentioned a Netflix documentary called My Octopus Teacher, which I had seen. And it's about this guy, this photographer who dives into the ocean and finds this one octopus that he just kind of literally develops a relationship with that day after day. And he learns that he is part of the ecology in a very profound way, because he was kind of depressed and burned out with his job. And it's a wonderful documentary. And to know that those ideas are maybe inherent in this notion of ecology in Alicia's talk tonight is really exciting. So as I turn it over to Alicia, I encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A portion here, and also raise your hand electronically here if you want to speak, and Shelley will open your mic. So without further ado, Alicia Pudwill from Qmatic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, and the octopus teacher was profound for me too. I love how you get the story of learning to connect with your environment and learning to be part of the system that we are part of. It's a huge system. And yeah, I feel free. I'm not going to be keeping track of the comments, so feel free, Shelley or John, interrupt me. Absolutely not offended at all. I am here to connect with you. And so I'm just going to share my perspective, what little inspiration and pieces of nuggets that I have. I am grateful to be here and sharing some time with you. So let's get to it. So you have the power to connect and inspire. As a project manager myself, I often struggle knowing how to untangle myself from all the negativity and the lethargy in my day-to-day life. But I truly mean it. You can dig deeper and you can find the calm beneath it all, and to find the strings that attach us all to purpose. And in a world which is so disconnected right now, a single connection can spark hope and inspiration and start a real movement and you have the power to change your world, your company, your projects, and your home.
Yeah. And you've got some great slides, Alicia. So yeah.
Yep. I'm just about to share. I didn't want to share that just for the first part. So here we go. Can you see my share? Can you see my slide?
Yes.
There we go. So you might have heard of some project management jokes over the years. When I started at Qmatic, my current company, my boss introduced himself with this graphic. My boss, by the way, I work at a Swedish company, and he's Dutch. He's from the Netherlands, so they have a good sense of humor. So imagine, me coming into this new company and starting with a project management team from complete scratch. I was coming in, they had hired everybody, and we're bringing in 5, 6 new people. So I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, especially with this slide. It's true though, right? There are so many groups involved with a project, and they all attack it from a different angle. And so much to the project's detriment. So we're constantly juggling expectations from different groups and different interpretations. The only cohesive element in this project that you see is that somehow a tree was or is involved. It's that final product along the way, how the customer is seeing it, how the business, how they're billed, how the finance is involved. It's a mess. It's a mess. And sometimes seemingly it is impossible, an impossible undertaking that we experience and live out on a minute-to-minute basis. And when approaching such chaos, it's easy to become frustrated, overwhelmed, and I'm surprised at how quickly my colleagues and my technical resources ooze distrust and injustice, and how quickly a person can display entitlement or escalate hostility in a team that's supposed to be working on the same project. But it's understandable, right? I feel it sometimes too. I know what it feels like to get frustrated that my expectations are not being met. And I know what it feels like to get tired of doing the same thing and getting the same discouraging results. And none of us are immune. So in social psychology, we call this intergroup conflict. There's a us versus them. I do have my undergraduate in psychology. I have, I've done some with applied behavioral analysis, so don't take me as an expert by any means, but I love psychology. We behave in a way that connects us to some people and to consider them as our tribe, and disconnecting from others and seeing them as the outer group. So it's a classic us versus them. And once you subconsciously make that distinction between groups, even within a team, humans will naturally become territorial. And you can probably come up with plenty of those examples. I can tell you right now that it's exhausting to try to be the only one in a project who cares about how well the final product is delivered. And even before COVID, I felt like people walked into the door of a company expecting to do their time and get out as soon as possible. Their real lives and purpose were outside of the door, and coming into work was a necessary evil. People did what they needed to do and kept their heads down, and then they left. So imagine me, bubbly, walking in the doors of my current job at Qmatic with the spring in my step and excited about each and every person I came in contact with. I wanted to win everybody over. I came in knowing that it was going to be a challenge, even though I'm in my 30s and I look much younger. Certainly doesn't help that I like to wear my hair long and I'm always smiling. So what I was trying to figure out is, what do I do to earn their trust and respect? I started going through my credentials, telling them, about my MBA and my past projects and my successes. I tried to be the person that they could learn from. And that was a big mistake. It only made my coworkers look at me in opposition to them and discredit me in any way that they could. So I remember being told, sweetheart, you'll quickly learn that being nice doesn't get things done around here. And they said it nicely, but it made the point. And sure, I knew that it wasn't about my character traits. Being happy and courteous, hopeful even, doesn't mean stupid or naive. And it was my approach and my understanding about where I fit in the business. This is where that structure comes from. So I knew I needed to do something different. I knew that I needed to connect on a deeper level and accept, even celebrate the way that things are. So I love my documentaries, decided to bring this one in as well. I was watching David Attenborough. He came out with a witness statement documentary, and it's called A Life on Our Planet. It's Netflix. I highly recommend it. He goes through his whole life's work from the beginning to the current, and he's in his 90s, right? So this is pretty much the end, and examines the Earth's ecology from a different perspective, expressing how the whole structure and system was slowly ripping apart at the seams from the beginning of his career. Humans have single-handedly within his lifetime destroyed whole species and biodiversity like we've never seen before. And he offers a message of hope, though, explaining how this delicate balance can be stitched back together through the human intervention. And he calls it rewilding, which I think is beautiful. We can investigate and observe how our ecology is designed, but we need to observe it accurately and with a clear understanding. I watched David Attenborough and took in everything he had to say with extreme seriousness. I think I cried twice, maybe 3 times, but it was incredibly compelling. I really thought about ecology and how the natural order of things have been broken. It reminded me of the company that I work for. Companies also have a natural order and structure. And it's a direct reflection of the biological system in which we surround ourselves every day. It makes sense, right? Because we're part of nature. So we should reflect the biology that's in nature. So take Mother Nature's the ecological system. And this is really blurry, but I think we've all seen this one before. The water cycle. Every element plays its part and it contributes. The heat and the solar energy evaporates the water, which allows the cloud cover and certain transportation of these nutrients into the air. And the wind carries the elements to another location. And the rain comes down on the land, the plants and animals alike, and provides the hydration into the lifeblood of Earth. And then the cycle starts over. And you can also get a little bit more complex into other ecological systems in nature, animal and plant species, how they interact. There are infinite amount of systems and structures that you can diagram. This is just a basic one. And it includes the solar energy. It's for me, systems are so fascinating. So you find the connections, really is what this is about. And you have those connections and you take another step back and you see where those pieces fit into the broader scheme. Eventually, you have one whole system. And understanding where I worked, where I was, what my connections were on a very basic level, it helped me to humble myself and not be so important. Instead, I was there as a role. I was there as a person who listened and learned about pain points. My character never changed. I am still the bubbly, excited person that I always was, but my relationships have changed. People know that I'm there to support them and always there to hear them out. My approach to my ecosystem in business, now understanding that I'm a very small piece of the whole, is what changed. I don't come into the room looking to teach. I come in expecting to learn, and I open my mind. By coming to the table with an open heart and mind, I have found myself breaking through the barriers. Instead of colleagues playing a game of hot potato with responsibilities, they see me as part of their group, part of their tribe. They are eager and willing to participate and provide assistance, to go above and beyond rather than just putting their head down and, getting through the day. So I came here to say, as a project manager, it is not only exhausting to think that you are the only one on the team, it is toxic and it has to end. And I'm not here to give a history lesson. We can all retrace our steps and see where we lost sight of our purpose. I'm just a woman who woke up after 30 years and realized I was living in a state of conflict instead of progress. I was living with conflict not only about who I was, but about where I was. I felt like I had to enter into a space with power and prove who I was to gain the respect from my colleagues. And, I know our company ecologies are broken, just like David Attenborough showed about planet Earth. And I believe that project managers, we have this incredible opportunity. We have a key to open the door in this world of systems and embrace the connections, because it's all about connections that we support, to champion and learn from the humans that we work alongside. So since I work in the IT world, I'm going to share this beautiful model of this ecosystem. We start with the person, right? The individual, the end customer. This end customer has already, you can see, many different connections. And one of them would be my product, if we're talking about my company. And it all fits into the end customer's system. But from there, we can dive into the digital experience ecosystem. And there are so many layers, and they just go so deep. And on the other side of this digital environment, you can find the company that works within this space on the bottom right over here. On a large scale here, you have the physical technology, the marketing, the stores, the sales departments, and so on. So you can start to see how you can build your company ecosystem from different perspectives, depending on the client, depending on the end customer, or the third-party vendor that you're interacting with. So it's all about perspective. This is a really basic one. There's so many different perspectives that you can come from, but where do you fit in, right? Where are your connections? You start small and you find those connections that you interact with. And then if you strengthen those connections, how will they grow? And which connections need to be supported and fed? And are they being fed the right way? So, this is more of a social ecosystem, but you can easily fit this into a business ecosystem. So you've got yourself or an individual. It could be from the customer's perspective. It could be from your perspective or your colleague's perspective. And then that system right outside in the microsystem where they're connected to and involved. A lot of times, you can draw those specific lines and show, where each of them connect individually. You can go out and out and out. There's even one outside the macro system, right? So looking at the 8 dimensions of the business ecosystems, just to dive a little bit farther for some fun. We're looking at the first one here, the ecosystem strategy. The bottom line is that every organization exists in multiple business systems, and you need to decide what role or strategy that your organization plays in these systems. It could be as a leader. It could be you're coming in and you're a disruptor. It could be you have a niche role. So you really have to decide on that strategy. The next one is the degree of openness. The degree of openness is driven by the strategy. So again, you go in, you start small and you start to build from there. And this defines the nature of the collaboration and the competitors. Outside of that, just briefly touching on them, the participants, the engagement of the participants, finding those connections, finding the organizations that you're interacting with, finding the diversity, that biodiversity that we find in nature, finding that in your business as well. Going out a little bit farther, the types of relationships, and we're looking at the whole world here. So with 7 billion people and so many more billion devices that we have on this world, there's just so many different connections that you have in place here. So really going deeper, and then value exchange, going into the monetary based value exchange, what different leverage that you have, what services are you offering, what value do you offer. That sixth one, industries. You can go into a variety of different industries, travel or healthcare, for example. Complexity, this is going to go into the multiple ecosystems. So just like the one before here, where you saw the end customer, the digital space, and then the company, you've got different ecosystems that you're involved in. So that's the complexity that you're working with. And then the different technologies. Of course, there's going to be so many different layers of technologies that you're involved with. So, when you're looking at ecosystems, there's different depths that you can go on. And these are just to give you, some ideas to sink your teeth into. Okay. So changing your connections and your purpose is no easy task. It's incredibly hard and it involves your whole mind-body focus. It won't happen with just you, and it won't happen with only one project, but each connection and project makes the difference. So it has to be important for you to open up and really build those relationships. And the way you approach your ecosystem is just as important as understanding the elements of the ecosystem itself. And we've been a part of this place for thousands of years, Basically, there are 3 therapeutic principles which we can take from the group psychotherapy, going back to my psychology theory, to help us out here. And this is social psychology after all, when you're dealing with people in business. Number 1, there's universality, can't say it, our shared feelings and experience. Similarly, I've heard this described as normalizing. So if someone is struggling or disengaging, you can normalize their situation, explain how typical this can be. Yeah, it makes sense. By helping a person connect with other shared experiences, you bring them back into your tribe. You help them see that you are the same. And when someone feels isolated, they're compelled to come and join a social group that they feel a sense of closeness with. Secondly, you can encourage imitation or modeling. So I have this trouble cleaning the dishes, doing it right away. And I have trouble cleaning the floors and the laundry, making the bed. You get the picture. Unfortunately, I have an 11 and a 9-year-old who watch me every day. My fiance yesterday told me, babe, this is a very simple thing. You just do a little bit at a time and it doesn't pile up. It's very simple, After you cook, you clean the dishes. After you eat, you sweep the floors. He's of course telling me this while he's sweeping the floor. He tells me you have a really hard time cleaning up. So he's very honest with me, but I'm getting a lot better. And actually he models for me very well, telling me while he's sweeping. And I'm working to be a better consistent modeler for my kids as well. Instilling hope. You can instill that hope. My daughter, she is just like me. She lets things pile up in her room. I'm a good modeler, unfortunately. She lets things pile up in the living room, in her school folders. You get the idea. A couple months ago, I discovered Kon Marie, an inspiring Japanese woman who loves to clean. Her motto is spark joy. Literally, when you touch your belongings, you should feel a physical sensation of joy in your fingertips. And if you don't, there's no reason to keep your item. You should let go items that don't spark that joy physically. So we read through a couple pages, and we watched one of her episodes. Her name is Marie Kondo, and this woman, she's such a short woman. Her excitement is so contagious, and my daughter just lit up. For the first time in her life, she unpacked her whole room. Not only did she give away toys and clothes like in mass exodus, she did it joyfully. It doesn't take much to instill a little hope. And I'm going to take it a step further. I want you to start structuring your business ecosystems. Try it out. Take a piece of paper and start from the small and start to draw those connections. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be difficult, but here's the twist. Start with somebody else's point of view. When we walk into the room, when we look at our project, when we fill out our documents, we see it from our perspective, and it makes sense. In many cases, it's completely unavoidable. Project managers are the glue that hold the project together. Even though we may like to believe that we're the center of every project, we will have a much more profound impact on others when we start with our audience's point of view. Our listener wants to know what's needed, and our job is to provide them with the tools to get there. We are not the hero of the story. We are the guide. We are the one that opens the door for that hero, for our audience, for that listener. They have a goal, and they have needs to complete that goal. And then they can emerge successful and hopefully transformed. And that's the power of framing your world and empowering your connections. It's not about us anymore. And that's the difference between a manager and a leader. Managers are people who have people who work for them. They push changes and they push people. And a leader is a person that people follow and believe in. A leader is able to appeal to hope, and they're able to inspire coalition. We are managers for sure, but we need to be leaders. People naturally want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to be part of a tribe. They want to have a deeper meaning and purpose in their life. For example, there's a famous study by Dr. Bruce Alexander in the 1970s. He had a lab with rats, and he taught them how to administer heroin or cocaine to themselves with a specific water bottle that he had in the corner of the cage. And they had a choice if they wanted to use it. Certain rats he isolated, he forced social isolation. And those rats that he isolated from other rats socially, they used more drugs. And rats that were allowed to socialize, they chose not to use as much drugs. They chose socializing over the drugs. And a recent study in 2018, led by Dr. Marco Venero, he confirmed that finding, and he included methamphetamine in his study. Rats prefer to socialize than wallow in self-pity and despair, even when it includes a quick fix. The idea here is that people will choose a healthy social environment or project team over self-interest and compulsion in order to be part of something bigger. People want to feel their business, their social and environmental ecology is safe. So that safety is a huge motivator. We cannot do this alone. I mean, just as humans in general, it takes a community like this, PMSIG, to come together and encourage one another to take a good look at our vulnerabilities and obstacles. We're going to mess up. We're going to encounter pain and suffering, but don't lose hope. Don't lose perspective. We are here for a reason, and we are passionate about business and the people in them for a reason. We have a very long journey ahead of us. and a lot of relationships to build. And in my life, I realize that I am in no way perfect. And many times I still feel completely isolated, especially with COVID. But I remind myself to look past the surface and disarray of project interpretations. We're all connected and we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. I still have a lot to learn in my journey, but I'm able to move forward in a world where I see myself reflected in everything. I can start my day with my chin up, my shoulders back, and my heart open. In this ecosystem, you have the power to connect and to inspire. I want to encourage you to do that because you know what? The broken system and people are looking for open doors. They are looking for leaders like you. Thank you. I spoke a little bit fast, so I'm hoping that there's some conversation, there's some questions that have been sparked.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to ask you one. In fact, this slide provoked it. When you were in the office and had that ecology surrounding you, you were swimming in it. Yeah. And now where we are with COVID and we're at home, what advice do you have to remember and take advantage of the ecosystem that was available to us before but isn't available to us anymore?
I am an avid believer that we all have opportunities, that every obstacle, every challenge is an opportunity for growth, and it's an opportunity for going deeper, and to find something new and to learn. So I have been taking this opportunity to find clarity in myself and to learn, about myself and what I need. And if I need that, other people need that. So, in this system, if you can be at least one step ahead, or at least thinking about the big picture, that's what your team needs too. So yeah, it's really death by email for sure. Call people, put on the FaceTime, if you're on Teams or whatever it is, Skype, Zoom, get your face showing. People need connection. They really need the eye contact, the nonverbals, and email doesn't do that. They just get the words. And a lot of times with people stressed and you're looking at a screen, it's so hard to edit and get all of that in line with your meeting. So if you can get somebody on the phone, that's the best way to do it. And that's what I've been doing. If I can, sometimes I have taken the opportunity to go in, but I don't need to. So 99% of the time, I haven't been. But just really take into consideration, if this is hard for you, it's that much harder for your team. So lots of compassion, lots of love, and a commitment to making it easier on your team.
Have you found that's true with your colleagues at Qmatic, that they're working harder, they're working longer at home, they're giving their companies more value, even though the ecology has changed from the office environment to their own environment? It's actually in a way worse, because you've combined two ecological systems, your personal one with your kids and your spouse and things you have to do, with the work one. So it forces us to have stronger boundaries, which is an interesting ecological imperative, especially when one of the important things that's said about program managers or project managers or product managers is they decry silos, and silos are so bad. But silos help us specialize, and they give us identity. They give us that tribe, like you said, and that we have to be careful that we're not always in that silo. And at home, it just feels like we might be in a silo. So I'm looking for more of your experience working from home.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, sure. I've had I myself have moved, and I've had to figure out my own boundaries with my family. I don't have a door on my office. And it's difficult. It's really difficult. I've had a coworker who her husband lost his job. So, their family was in crisis, and she's working at home in that environment. And, they don't say a lot, but that little piece that they say is a huge red flag. And to really be on their side. What do they need? What can you do to support them? I had another colleague who he had his kid, who I think was 1 or something like that. His kid was in the background all the time. And so there are these sensitive conversations where you really have to approach and find the right people to connect with them and figure out, what does this new system look like? How can you support people trying to do this and transitioning at home? They have a job, but you don't know what their extended family looks like.
Good point. All right. Okay, we've got our first real question from the audience. It's about cultural differences, and how do you think cultural differences affect this view of ecology and symbiotic that you spoke about in your slides?
Yeah, so I would probably go here. So the cultural, I do love the global environment, and I work with my colleagues in Europe. So Europe is a big one. We do have some developers in Sri Lanka. I have worked with people in India in my last job. So I do have some experience with that, with other cultures and other countries. And it's while it's part of the system, you have to go a little bit farther out. And you do have to be very aware of where people are coming from. Instead of the golden rule, it's the platinum rule, right? Always, 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 when it comes to cultural differences, it's not how you want to be treated, which is the golden rule. You treat others how they want to be treated. And that takes a lot of thought and some questions and being patient and really kind on yourself. You got to be really kind about it because you're going to make mistakes. But and also in the company that I work with right now, we do have like the two different cultures are white American and African American. I live in Atlanta, and so while I live in a city with very diverse background, there is those dynamics. So in my company specifically, there's in my office we have two very different, and it's pretty much half and half. And sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes it feels like it's us versus them. But it's really about connecting. It's about asking questions. It's about allowing yourself to make a couple mistakes, but really putting yourself out there. As well as we have the U.S. versus Europe. So we have different. Europe includes we have Italy, Denmark, Sweden, France. We have a wide variety of companies or countries that we work with within our company, but it's really Europe versus US. And it's really just about reaching out and the platinum rule. I think for me, that's the basis when it comes to the system. Yeah, it's definitely not the individual, your home office microsystem. The company really should be microsystem, but it might be more of a mesosystem depending on how disconnected you are from it.
What about the culture between being a PM and being in QA and being in development? Have you seen any vocational cultural differences that affect ecology in interesting, surprising, or profound ways?
Yeah, those silos, definitely the verticals. As a PM, you work with all of them. And that is one of the things that I love, absolutely love about project management, is that I get to get in there and connect with all of the different groups. It definitely got its positives and negatives. Specifically, John, say again, the issues with those silos.
Well, there's a few issues between PM, QE, and development. And one is just locus of responsibility. In other words, you may have heard this before, Alicia. Had it not been for QE, we would have had a worse product. But there's also something that says, well, you guys in QE, quality engineering, you enable us to be lazy in development. We don't have to worry. We can be a little bit reckless because we know you're going to catch it. So they seem diametrically opposed. Is QE is the rescuer, or QE is the enabler, that we're enabling, like you said about modeling and your husband and your daughter, right? So he models for you and you model for her. So what is like culturally, when you look at the role of QE, which in my opinion is to discover important risks on a project, what is your take on the cultural differences between being a developer, and being a quality engineer, and being a PM, and where would that, like, what are the important and interesting experiences you've had perhaps around the nexus of those three?
Yeah, there's always that's the hot potato. You're responsible for this. No, you're responsible for doing the initial. Yeah, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and get them in the same room and figure out how to do that team building, how to somehow connect them and understand that there is a relationship between them. So rather talking about the issue, connecting them socially somehow, because we're humans, right? And they are in different silos, and they need to be, but at the same time, they're part of the same team, and so what they do together benefits everybody. And it might take a little bit of extra time, but it's really, if you feel like you know the person, it's harder to be difficult. Now there's all the personalities out there. And you're not going to change everybody, but with a little bit of modeling, with a little bit of connecting, getting people in the same conference digital room, you can do a lot of good. Yeah.
All right, relative to culture, we have a questioner who says she's been a tester for a while, and she finds that other cultures outside the USA, the level of acceptable quality is significantly lower. So where do you think the balance is to meet them at their level, or opportunities to insert your values of higher quality?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. There's only, it sounds like it's an ongoing issue. So, it has to be addressed carefully. Especially depending on the culture. If you're talking about Asian cultures, you always, you never want to start with the issue. You always want to ask them how they are. You always want to start with some niceties, and that's that connection, that relationship. Otherwise, you can start off on the wrong foot in the first place. But coming to an understanding of expectations. And then how do you confirm or follow up with those expectations that those are actually being adhered to? So accountable, the RACI chart, accountable, responsible, and making sure that everybody knows what their role is. I think in that case, you might need to simply go back to the drawing board. And just say, this is what I've been hearing, and this is I've been seeing, and I want to know if we can make some adjustments and you know, both on our both parts, you know, come to an understanding of what each group needs.
Yeah, I think the operative word you said in there is expectations. And I think that when you look at ecology toward your theme, we're worried because we look at the planet and we say it's not meeting our expectations like it used to. It's hotter, there's more hurricanes, you may say there's more tornadoes, that it's man-made, or it could be, you know, other artificial reasons. And so we get worried because of expectations. But if we didn't have expectations, if we said, whatever, let the planet do whatever, then we'd be a lot more relaxed about it, you know? And so it's, I think it is a matter of what you said, of expressing your expectations in your culture of what you think should happen. And that winds up being kind of the oracle, you know, the right answer. Like, this is what I expect, at least in my culture. It's expected that you say, how are you, before you launch into, you know, whatever it is. It's just expected. Otherwise, it winds up making offense of someone. So.
Yeah, and I think that when you're looking at the system, it might help to try to fill in the gaps of what their system looks like, especially if it's, you know, in a different country, in a different culture, in a totally different kind of company. If they're a third-party vendor, their system is going to look a lot different than yours. So if you can consider what elements are at play, what their needs are, you know, it's going to fill in those gaps for what those expectations look like, and you'll be ahead before you have that difficult conversation with them.
All right. There's no open questions right now. I invite somebody to either type something in or raise their hand if they want to speak. Otherwise, I have many questions, and I'm cognizant of time, so we'll stop at 7, so we still have 10 minutes. I love this slide that you're on, Alicia, while we wait for other questions. As a former QE, I look at diagrams like this and I pick one thing, one bullet item, and I say, what if that goes wrong? Mm-hmm. What if digital security goes wrong? What if email goes down? What if mobile apps for employees get removed? Some perilous kind of thing to make the ecological system a bit more interesting so that I can anticipate failures. In your work, when something goes wrong in your ecology, is there a few like heuristics or rules of thumb that you would go to figure out how can I improve this part of the ecology that's failing?
Well, always as a project manager, communication and setting expectations. So if something goes wrong, from somebody else's point of view, they want to hear it from you before they find out. That's a worse shock. So if you can clear the air, if at all possible, and reach out before they find out on their own, and lose trust, you build that trust if you build that communication. So yeah, always, if possible, letting people know what's going on, and if there is a timeline, it's a priority 1 issue or whatnot. But yeah, that dealing with it on the front end is always best. But then really partnering with people to figure out, okay, and this is where the ecology system comes in too. If you know where people are connected, you know, if you know who are the developers for really specific products, because sometimes when it's a complicated product, you know, that those layers go really deep. But the more you know about how that system and the structure is built, then you know who to contact to ask to fill those gaps, to ask what else can you do to even for information finding. those kinds of things are really helpful. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it reminded me of something actually you said in your bio, that you've been a yoga instructor for 3 years, and it seems like very Zen, like a very, I know I'm kind of mixing cultural metaphors here, but
Yeah.
yeah, yoga, it seems to me, is this process of balance, of finding that harmony within ecological systems as it pertains to yourself. Would you agree that there's something in your work that as a yoga instructor, you kind of bring into your work to balance things?
Yeah, yeah. Yoga is exactly how you mentioned it. It's the sun versus the moon. It's balance. But and it's helped find clarity for me in understanding a totally different culture. Yoga comes from India, a totally different cultures, philosophies on life, and they're very, very, very old and rich texts. But for it's the same thing actually in applied behavioral analysis. I worked for quite a few years with kids with autism and in psych wards, and I mean, you name it, group homes, working with really high stress, high anxiety situations, much more high stress than in the business world, because people are screaming, they're ripping things, they're throwing things. And the best thing to do in that situation, I mean, it's good to express yourself, but if you can use your words, it's better. So for me, yes, yoga it has provided a lot of clarity for me, but my actual experience working in high conflict, high stress, unsafe environments has really helped put things into perspective. Communication is key. If somebody can tell me that they're angry that they didn't get orange juice or they didn't get the right color straw or something, that is key to know ahead of time, so that we can help them and we can have a conversation about what we're going to do, rather than everything just exploding. As well as it doesn't help to react. You're gonna do nothing other than lose trust if you react and cause more harm. And so, I have sometimes gotten the response that, they don't think that I take it seriously. And no, I'm on the phone right now because I take it very seriously, and we're working on it, and I'm going to get you. I'm not yelling, I'm not screaming, I'm not, I can be Zen, but there's no reason to overreact in situations if you can get people into the situation and you can let them know that it's serious and it's important and you need them to work on it right now.
Yeah, I think, systems get stressed, or components of systems get stressed. And I'm glad you mentioned stress, because it seems like a lot of people these days under COVID are feeling more stress, and maybe they're bringing that into their projects, or maybe their projects are bringing that more into their home lives.
Huge.
So it's
Huge.
just a matter of, just like yoga, I guess, is an antidote to stress. What can we do to look at our systems and see, well, there's something that's about to be stressful happening, or there's a stressful component of our system. What can we do about that? And maybe modeling is your answer when you're on one of your slides. It's just a model, just being calm,
Yeah, the other thing is, and I'm a systems person, so my systems get kind of fuzzy from yoga to business to psychology. It kind of all overlaps and it gets entangled. But in yoga, one of the ideas, I guess maybe in Buddhism, maybe not quite yoga, but is to disassociate, and it's not disassociative, it's to disassociate, it's to take a step back. It's not to associate with negativity, it's not to associate with positivity, it's not to associate with your situation or any situation, it's to really take a step back. And when you take a step back, just like when we left Earth and we saw Earth from the moon and we took that picture, we disassociated from the Earth and we got that perspective that we had never had before. for the first time. And so it's the same thing in business, and it's the same thing in stressful situations. If you can take even 2 seconds and take a step back, you can start to see a little bit bigger of a picture and understand where somebody else is coming from, what element might be in play, where a gap is, and thinking clearly really allows you to have creative thinking rather than a fight or flight situation. So you really make good decisions if you can somehow keep your calm, or at least take it a notch down.
Yeah, I think in Buddhism, it's attachment. And you said it in a different word, but it's detachment versus attachment.
Yes.
And seeing the earth from the moon is a form of detachment. You realize you're not on the place where everybody else that you've ever known is living. And that is more of what you said about perspective too. So that's one way to relieve stress, is to take a minute, as you said, to detach. And then when you've got your strength again, like reattach in a different way, I guess is one of the
And that's a fun tidbit. I don't know if it's in this book. This is one of my favorite books, Inner Engineering by Sadhguru. Sadhguru talks about the moon, finding that distance. That's Sadhguru. One of my favorites.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. We're almost at 7 minutes. Last call for any questions, either verbally or written in the chat window. We'll give a minute for that.
Yeah, and the other thing about disassociating or finding that perspective is you get to observe things accurately. If you're really up close, you don't see the whole picture. And if you can see things accurately, you won't regret your actions later.
Yeah, very good. Nice touch. All right. I see that the chat window is empty, and that is right at time. So I want to thank you, Alicia, for insightful, almost metaphysical talk about the role of PM and ecologies in our systems, and being aware and alert to different things that may cause us stress and whatnot. I think it was a perfect topic in the climate that we're in, quite literally. So I want to thank you for volunteering to do this, especially at the late hour it is in Atlanta. Awesome. So it's been recorded. It'll be up on YouTube, right, Shelley, eventually?
Yes, it'll be up on YouTube probably tomorrow.
Okay, cool. The next one obviously is QA SIG in January, and then PM SIG again in February. We'll hear from Nicole Birdsall, who is a former PM at eBay, and she's now an instructor. I haven't gotten her abstract yet, but there's time, and we'll put it up on the site. So.
Yep, and I don't have details about QA SIG yet, but we'll be announcing that pretty soon.
Okay, cool. All right.
Well, thank you.
That's it.
How exciting. Thank you, guys.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. Thanks, Shelley. See you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.